In studio with the Admiral Bill Stubblefield. Billy.
Good morning, Rob. Great to be here as always.
Sergeant Michael Height.
Good morning, Robert.
Attorneys at law, Michael Carl.
Good morning.
Senior member of our crew, Lawrence Schultz.
Great to be here. Good to see you, Rob.
Burke Schultz, Harmon, and Jenkinson. Big Larry, take that mic and just kind of twist it and turn it to where you are exactly speaking. There you go.
Perfect. Like that?
Your voice is obviously deep and bass enough that the mic picks you up wherever you are, but it's often like 4 inches pointing away from you when you're talking.
We like it that way.
Yeah. I'm still the guy whose third grade teacher sent home a note to my mother begging her to teach me how to whisper.
Please quiet this boy down. Via telephone, Joseph Joey Toots Ferretti.
Good morning, gentlemen.
Unmuted. So just before we're ready to go, about 30 seconds away, Colin comes in and he says, hey, we just need to adjust one camera for the two mics, right? So we eventually do that, and then I look over and Larry's camera's in the wrong place. So I'm like, oh, Larry, we need to fix your camera. And there's like 10 seconds left in the commercial. And as I do that, I stand up to adjust Larry's camera and completely destroy the camera that's on Height and Carl.
And we were all cheering. We were happy.
Praying that it's broke.
So we had to do a real quick fix on that one there. Just
take out the two beautiful people, right, Mike? Right?
Mike and Mike.
That's lovely. Absolutely lovely. It's been a busy week for everybody, I guess, this week. And our leadoff hitter, as always, is Mr. Joseph Ferretti. Joe, the stage is yours.
Thank you, Rob. One of the major news stories for the week was this shooting in New York City of the CEO from United Healthcare. A horrific act. Guy was shot in the back as he was heading to a conference. And as of this morning's news, that last I checked, the assailant is still at large, but there is of course, a manhunt underway, and I suspect they'll catch him soon enough. But what was interesting to me was if you go online and read a lot of the reactions to that, of course, there's a lot of sympathy for the family. He was a father. He had two kids. But also there is a wide and large sentiment out there expressed by doctors and by just ordinary folks in the country who are treating this assailant as a modern-day D.B. Cooper, you know, the guy who jumped out of the plane with a bunch of money and has never been found 40, 50 years ago. There's a lot of people rooting for this guy because of their disdain, their anger with the healthcare system in this country. And it extends beyond the CEO's United Healthcare company. People are expressing disappointment, frustration with our current system and how it operates and how expensive it is. And they're upset with these insurance companies because of their role in this matter. And we see that playing out on the stage in West Virginia with PEIA, your last segment with Dale Lee and Mike Height talking about the problems we have in the state of West Virginia with rising health costs and the impact it's having on our state workers and teachers. The PEIA board yesterday increased the deductibles and the premiums, and it's quite a healthy increase. Even the spousal surcharge is going up $200. So if you're a state worker or teacher and your spouse is on your plan, you're going to be paying $200 more a month for that coverage. At what point can these folks not absorb these costs? I'm going to get personal here just for a second, Rob. My last year as a resident in West Virginia, it was just my wife and I on our policy. We had no medications. The only surgical history we had was from 1988 when my wife had corrective foot surgery. Our kids accused us of not using the healthcare system enough, not going to the doctor enough. My healthcare premium, my insurance premium on the private market was over $2,000 a month. That's $24,000 plus per year. And I had to absorb a $6,000 deductible to get that premium. I would submit that a lot of folks are going to have trouble swallowing that kind of monthly expense. It was my largest monthly expense that I had of all things that I was paying for, including helping run a business, that was my largest monthly outlay. I don't know what the answer is, but I do know one thing. In the short term, I believe that the legislature is going to have to swallow hard and sign checks to help with these PEIA costs. A solution is down the line. And I don't know that privatizing insurance, given my personal experience on purchasing insurance privately, is the answer. But I think what's coming is a real battle between state workers and teachers and the legislature over where the additional money is going to come from to help these folks with their insurance costs. Otherwise, we're going to have our teachers who are currently paid 50th in the nation comparatively even worse off, given the rising health costs that they're going to be asked to absorb. So I see no other answer in the short term. I'm interested in what others have to say.
All right, let's start first with Mr. Stubblefield.
Yes, we've often said the legislators can chew gum and work at the same time, and I think that's exactly right. But there's a sense of priorities, and you cannot have significant or the major priorities on a large array of items. You need only one or two. The last couple so years has consistently been, and I think appropriately so, legislators have directed their attention toward income tax reduction, state income tax reduction. Also Amendment 2 when that came through. But because of that, I do not believe as much attention has been directed toward some infrastructure issues as what it should have been. PEIA is a product of that. The salaries that we see with the state workers, I think, is a product. The School Building Authority, we've had a lot of attention to that recently, how there's over $250 million, $270 million requested, and yet there's only $50 million allocated to the School Building Authority. So there's a lot of infrastructure needs that I don't think can be done with a casual brush of acknowledging we have a problem. It's got to take some real attention. And I hope this is one of the priorities of both the governor and the legislators this coming year to look at some of these critical infrastructures.
Larry.
It is another feature, as Joe alluded to, of what drives our teachers to other states, what drives our CPS workers to other jobs. Not only is the pay pretty bad, but the insurance is getting remarkably expensive for these workers. And so it's the kind of thing where if you want to be an opportunity economy, you have to have people working not just for private industry, but for the state government who are relatively happy with their pay and their insurance and other benefits. As we don't have that, then we end up with these critical shortages in certain government employee areas like teachers and, as I always bring up, CPS workers, where these are perhaps as vital as anything a state government does, and you can't fill the slots. This just makes that whole wage problem even worse.
Mike Height.
Well, the legislature can walk and chew gum at the same time, and I think we have addressed a lot of these issues year after year. We have, to the governor's credit, and I've been a critic of the governor on many occasions, but to his credit, he's done pay raises for state workers quite often since he's been in office, and the legislature has approved those. Are where we need to be with state workers? Are we competitive with other states around us? Probably not. We still need to have more improvements there. With the insurance, it's a big mess right now, and it's a big mess for everybody. That's what I keep saying. When you look at PEIA, when you compare apples to apples, when you look at the private sector and what they're paying for insurance, the private sector's paying even higher rates than PEIA. So while I have empathy for those state workers who are on PEIA and are absorbing all these rising costs, I do have empathy for them. But these are things that we have been dealing with in the private sector since the advent of the ACA. You can look back and see when all this started. Insurance has always been high. It's always been costly. But since the ACA, it has grown exponentially. Every single year, premiums go up. Every single year. So you want to point to something? Point to Obamacare. Because that's when all of this started. When we started subsidizing, and that's exactly what it is. It is the people who work and pay for their private insurance are subsidizing those who are on the ACA and get it at a cheaper rate. Now, there are people, I employ people now who go through the ACA because it's cheaper than what I can provide as a company to them, even paying 80% of it. They still go to the ACA. You want to change something? Let's get out of state-run health care. It's bad. If you look at other countries around the world, you'll see they're trying to get away from it as well. It's not working in other places. I don't know why we tried to work it here. And for anybody that says the single payer method is the way to go, you're out of your mind.
Mike Carl.
Well, certainly healthcare insurance coverage is a major issue. It's also a complex issue, and I'm speaking as a elderly person with a fair amount of health issues, and I have Medicare. So is there something and I don't feel heavily burdened at all with the cost of my health care, and so how does that connect to the problem? That arrangement. It's a huge problem, and the interplay of healthcare costs and private enterprise and government responsibility. That's all. It's most I can say is it's a real challenge, but my life is not burdened by the problem.
Joe, you mentioned D.B. Cooper. I was thinking, in regards to how this assassin has been made in some circles on social media into a folk hero, I'm thinking more like Bonnie and Clyde or John Dillinger. And you look back to those folks during the Depression era, they're hitting banks. Why was there so much sympathy for these criminals during that time for hitting banks? Well, what was going on at that time during the Depression? The banks were closing on farms. The banks were closing on houses. They were taking the properties, leaving people without a home, couldn't pay for their the taxes on their farm, couldn't make the payments on their house. These folks were hitting those banks, taking the money, in some cases distributing some of it to people that they'd run into, and in other cases keeping it for themselves, whatever. But their legend grew, and they became folk heroes of their day. And that's what you're seeing on social media with this murderer in the streets of New York City. And while we were discussing PEIA, I'm trying to keep the language against insurance companies down from an inflammatory standpoint because of what happened to the CEO of United Healthcare, who was hunted down. This guy, as more details come out, this was a professional hit. This guy staked this guy out and waited. He did not kill the eyewitness who was right beside the CEO of United Healthcare when the murder took place. He shot numerous times the CEO, let the eyewitness go, and then took off. Well, what is I don't know what the reasoning is. Was this a directed response to something that happened to this guy in his life in regards to health insurance premiums, or some procedure that was turned down, or somebody in whose life who died because they weren't approved of some surgery they were supposed to get? I don't know. And while that's all a mystery, people begin to speculate. But you can see the anger toward these healthcare companies, because at some point along the way, your premiums are going to be more than what you make. And maybe for some people that's already the case. So they've chosen to, as best they can, just kind of gut it out on their own.
Well, we know, Rob. First of all, your analogies are spot on, and we know in this country that medical debt is a large component of the personal debt that we all carry as citizens. There are families who have been ruined in bankruptcy because of medical debt that they're unable to pay because it's into the hundreds of thousands of dollars. And we can speculate that, again, while we can all agree this is horrific, what the CEO suffered and what that family's having to endure, we can speculate that it had something to do with the business he was a part of, because on the bullet casings that were found at the crime scene were written words that people like Larry Schultz, Mike Carl, and I know all too well regarding insurance cases and the denial of insurance claims. So some sort of message was trying to be sent with this murder. And as you mentioned, online, you can see the vitriol that is now spewing forth from a lot of people, not only about health insurance companies, but about their own experiences dealing with those companies, the indebtedness they have incurred, the frustration of having claims denied, the number of lawsuits that have been resolved or are pending in our state and federal courts between policyholders and their insurance companies are numerous. And some of them are shocking in terms of the behavior that some of these insurance companies have engaged in to deny claims. I was reading a case last night about a Penn State student who, needs hundreds of thousands of dollars of treatment annually to deal with some digestive tract issues. And the insurance company hid documents and fudged reports and deep sixed an expert who was supporting the treatment that this kid had from the Mayo Clinic as medically unnecessary, according to United Healthcare. So, the PEIA problem is just one facet of a larger national problem that we have to solve. I disagree with Mike Height about Obamacare. I have been purchasing insurance privately since 1992. And I can tell you every year we went through underwriting every year in order to get the best possible insurance premium we could get because of the rising cost of health insurance. We'd get a teaser rate, we'd go with the company, and the next year they would jack our rates up 20% on our premiums. And rather than do that, we would go back, we put the whole group back through underwriting to try to avoid that increase. That was happening in the 90s and early 2000s, well before Obamacare. This is a trend that's been going on in this country for a long time. And it's going to take smarter people than me to figure out how do we solve this problem. All I see is a lot of finger pointing right now, and I see a lot of discussion about we did this, we didn't do that, but really we're not getting to the heart of the problem. And I don't know that single payer is the solution. There's been mixed results with countries across the globe on that, but we have got to sit down and figure out how to deal with this because it is becoming a burden that most of us cannot carry.
Joe, have we looked hard about what contributes to the escalating cost of escalating medical costs? Is it the hospitals have become more expensive trying to keep up with technology? Are the doctors trying to pay off their massive school debts? Is it medicine? And if it's medicine, why are we paying more than other countries for the same treatment? Are there any studies that mines down and tries to get to the heart of why we're seeing such escalation of medical costs?
Well, there's a lot of villains in the story, Bill. I've got a daughter who's in the medical field. She's an ER physician, and she's in a group, and so she's somewhat exposed to the billing aspects of things and insurance reimbursement rates. It's a constant battle for her ER group to get reimbursement rates where they need to be. She sees the hospitals having to pay. They can't hire nurses full time, so they got to pay traveling nurses exorbitant hourly rates just to have nursing at staffing levels that are necessary for patient care. She sees them buying the latest and greatest in CT and MRI machines that cost a lot of money. And there's a need then to bill out the use of those machines to just recoup the expenses incurred by the hospitals for that equipment. There's a lot of advances in medical care. Pharmaceutical companies are charging exorbitant rates for their drugs. And you look at somebody like Mark Cuban, who has started a program online where you can purchase medicines at 10% of the cost that insurance companies and Medicare are paying for those same drugs. There are solutions out there, but we're nitpicking a little bit here. The overall solution is going to take a very comprehensive approach that's going to really result in a reform of the whole system. But right now, it's just these small little battles that we're having to play as it's playing out in the state of West Virginia. I don't see any other solution, again, in the short term, other than a legislature scratching more checks.
Mike Carl.
Let me just interject that introducing more stronger free enterprise competition might be part of the answer.
National, stop the state borders, in other words, let healthcare companies bid in all 50 states.
Yep.
Well, and let them bid against each other.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
Yeah. Hey, there's people say your premiums are going up, your deductibles go up. The doctors are complaining that their reimbursement rates are going down to the point where they're refusing certain insurance companies all the time because the reimbursement rates are so low. So the question that the average person asks is, well, then where's all my premium money going?
There's a lot of monopoly control that has added to this problem.
And you look at the insurance companies are doing what right now? They're buying up the naming rights on football stadiums and baseball fields. They got so much money, they're giving it away to put their name on top of stadiums. Well, maybe that's part of where it's going. And they're advertising all over the place, which is good for our business, right? Absolutely. But every time, as Dale Lee put in, when it's a private company, there's going to have to be profit built in as opposed to when it's a bit more controlled. And then you look at Anthem Blue Cross. If you haven't heard about them in the news recently, 17 hours ago, they made an announcement. Joe, you familiar with this one? They're reversing their policy to limit anesthesia coverage to a certain number of hours while you're in the hospital. So you're on the table for 8 hours, your insurance covers 5, you just scream like hell or bite a rope or a leather strap for the last 3? Well, after the shooting of the CEO, they reversed their policy. There was a lot of protest over it, but no doubt this assassination on the streets of New York, Joe, helped in some ways turn that around.
Well, and what drives people crazy, and perhaps where a lot of the vitriol comes from, are the little anecdotal bits of information we get about CEO compensation at these companies. United Healthcare, I hate to pick on them, but they're, believe me, the medical community demonizes those folks because they don't like dealing with UHC. But the predecessor to the unfortunate individual who got gunned down in Midtown Manhattan, his predecessor retired recently with a pay package of $144 million. So if you want to get people upset about the fact that they can't get their medicines or their therapeutic treatment approved by their insurance company, just look at that kind of information and you can wonder no more why people are upset.
I was looking at a YouTube of
20
this
seconds left.
Incident to see if there was more than we saw on the news, and one of the comments was especially too soon was what I thought. And he said, the person said, it appears he didn't die of a gunshot wound, it was a pre-existing condition. And I thought, boy, and hours after the man dies, there's this bitter remark, and I think that's what Joe was talking about.
Yep. Hey, good start to the show, Joe. It certainly got emotions going here. And we'll stop here. Bill's on the clock when we get back. A lively first session from Joseph Joey Torts Ferretti via telephone. Joe, welcome back.
Thank you.
Always have to delay a second to make sure Joe's unmuted. On his end, no, I didn't do it.
Hey, Doug, you should be one picking on somebody about a mute button. Come on.
That's what I'm saying. I didn't do it. Yeah. Also in studio, Sergeant Michael Heights.
Good morning. Great to be here.
Michael Carl, what was your rank, Mike? Specialist?
I was an E5.
What is that?
It's like a buck sergeant.
Buck sergeant. All right, but that's pretty cool. 2 sergeants. They got 2 sergeants.
Yeah.
You were spec, right?
Spec.
Yeah, spec 5 specialist.
Yeah. All right.
It's
Mr.
Same rank.
Same dollar or same pay rank.
Pay rank.
Yeah. They don't have spec 5s anymore.
No.
No.
Carl broke the mold.
Yeah.
Mr. Lawrence Schultz, attorney at law,
Great to be here.
and with issue number 2, the Admiral Bill Stubblefield.
Rob, I see 2 things happening on the national scale that's going to come together. When they do come together, it's going to be a very interesting results. On one, for those people that have not been paying a lot of attention, this past week, President Biden pardoned his son. It was picked up in a few of the papers and got a little bit of publicity, and
Just a little.
a little bit. And folks said, well, there blows his legacy. Other folks said, well, the legacy is already blown. He had nothing to lose by doing this. The flip side of the coin are the retribution. Are they real or are they just hyperbole? And the retribution of various folks that have that run counter either in reality or perception to Donald Trump. The list is fairly long. Jack Smith, Liz Cheney, General Miley, General John Kelly, Nancy Pelosi, so forth, Dr. Anthony Fauci. Fuel was laid to the fire with the candidate for the FBI director, Cash Littell, made a point earlier. We're going to go after all these people. We're going to go after with a vengeance. We're going to prosecute them. Again, that may be hyperbole. It may be real. If it is real, then at the very minimum, these targeted individuals are going to have to spend a lot of money to defend themselves. Where these 2 things come together would be, will President Biden do preemptive pardons? Your knee gut before he leaves office. The knee-jerk reaction is he'll not do that, but more and more people are suggesting the fact he might do that, just for the fact that to protect these folks that have been loyal to him or at least loyal to the system that are viewed as targeted for folks like Kash Patel and others. So the question is, should we expect to see preemptive pardons for a large list of individuals?
And Joe, we begin with you via telephone.
Bill, gosh, I hope not, because I am becoming more concerned by the day that this pardon power, which is almost absolute with regard to presidential or executive power, as per our Constitution, I think we are on the precipice of having some real abuses of that power. And I can tell you, looking at the history, and Rob, we talked about this on Tuesday's show, if you look back over time, pardons were pretty much reserved for folks who have been tried and convicted and were probably sitting in jail or prison somewhere, and the president would step forward and say, I think they've done enough. I'm going to commute the sentence, or I'm going to pardon this individual. It is morphing now into preemptive or protective pardons, which are really just executive grants of immunity. And I fear that if Biden goes down this path, and I've seen the same list of names that you rattled off, Bill, Mark Milley, Fauci, maybe even Larry Schultz. There's
Even he wouldn't go that far.
There's a lot of people who have been targeted, and it's with a lot of rhetoric, but you never know. We're about to have 4 years with a president who undoubtedly, I think we can all agree, the guy pushes the envelope. And he has called the enemy from within greater than the threats posed by Russia and China and Iran. So you wonder if these folks don't need this kind of protection, so they don't have to spend the rest of their lives defending themselves. But I just fear that the exercise of that power can be abused, and perhaps will be abused if we start going down the path of preemptive pardons, because we're setting a precedent where a president who comes in, and it doesn't have to be this next president, it could be down the road, and enjoys the immunities provided by the Supreme Court, it's always been said, well, no one else who acts on his behalf is going to be immune. Well, they can be if he starts granting preemptive pardons. So I fear that could be really dangerous for our democratic system, and I hope that Biden doesn't set that precedent.
Mike Carl.
Well, one of the rare times I completely agree with what I just heard.